DLC.
All right, I have one more game on my playlist. It's actually fits right into this conversation in a very odd way. It's a new game.
Uncharted 2. Oh, sorry.
I was playing Uncharted 2. No. It's called Astor Blade of the Monolith. Astor Blade of the Monolith. And I saw somebody describe this as, what if they made a new PS2 game and it looked really pretty? And that's kind of accurate, I think. It feels like, I mean, the easy comparison of Astor Blade of the Monolith is an old Zelda game, like Ocarina of Time. It's very much hoping to give you a lot of that Zelda, classic 3D Zelda vibe, and it does so. I mean, you're going around, you're going into dungeons, you're a cute kind of dude who has to save the world because he gets a sword, and you're doing puzzles and you're fighting monsters, and you're unlocking new weapons and you're getting new abilities to go to new places. So it does have a lot of Zelda vibes, but I think even more than that, it's like like Darksiders or Soul Reaver. There were some of those games in like the PS2 era that were really like solid games, but they just never kind of endured as long-standing franchises. And that's kind of what Astor Blade of the Monolith feels like. I will say it does have some modern trappings, and it certainly is prettier. It doesn't look like a PS2 game, right? It's really pretty, almost too colorful. It's a very vibrant world, almost garish in how it's presented, but I think charmingly so. It lots of detail, lots of really different biomes, lots of really cool visual flourishes, and like I said, very colorful, very vibrant, and a much beefier game than you might think. It's an indie game. I got it for $22. It's not, not a full priced game, and it's one of those ones where I kind of don't know what to do with this game. I don't know how to describe it to the audience, the audience, because on the one hand, like, it's a $22 game that is solid. It's solid. And like, if it had come out 15 years ago, it would probably be one of the best games you played 15 years ago, whatever it was. But the bar for how good games are now is so high, and there's such polish with, I mean, if you look at a game like Hades 2, which is not even officially out yet, and it has such polish, this game, I think, is not that polished. But it's also an indie game with a very small team and a very small price tag. So I kind of don't know where to put this. It's like, on the one hand, I go, there's better ways to spend your time if time is at a premium for you. There's games I would recommend ahead of Astor Blade of the Monolith. But also, there's worse ways to spend your time. It's not a bad game by any stretch. It's got a lot of really fun moments. There's combat that is that is constant, that is perfectly fine. You get cool upgrades. You got this runic system where you're getting these cool almost God of War style extra things you get to do when you buy into the system. There's different weapons that you'll get that change up the way you play. It's got a parry system because it's 2024 and you can't have a combat game without a parry system. But it's definitely not Souls-like. There's no Souls-like elements. Very sort of classical hack and slash, fun. You feel OP a lot. It's got some light platforming and some light puzzles. It's got a lot going for it, and I kind of just don't know. I don't even know how to position it relative to the audience. So I'm just kind of laying it out there for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pretty solid, fun kind of classic Zelda 3D Zelda-like, before the Breath of the Wilds of the world happened. This is, that Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask style. Not as polished as those games, but also not bad, not broken, not unplayable. Certainly has fun elements to it. So
That's how
I
I
don't know.
describe myself on dating apps. If I were to describe myself on dating apps, like not as polished as this guy, but also not
as polished.
bad.
I'm no Link.
Yeah, playable, like worst.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
why I had to get married young, so I didn't have to bother with this. Worst ways to spend your
Smart.
times, but also not a bad way to spend your time.
Is it a game that you would tee up while you're waiting? Like if you have your main game and you're waiting for the match to queue or whatever, is that a game that you would recommend teeing up while you're waiting for the main game? Like,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's a perfectly pleasant experience, and I also kind of feel I don't want to what's the word? I don't want to give short shrift to an indie team of like, they did such a great job. They're a plucky indie team and they're really like, swinging for the fence. I don't want to patronize. That's the word I couldn't think of. I don't want to be patronizing to it's an indie game. And I don't want to be like, well, for an indie game, it's great. It's a solid game. It's just, it doesn't have that really supreme level of polish that you get with some games in a similar genre. But I don't think it takes that much away from it, right? I do think I think that might be a great way to describe it, Sarah, is it's a game that can live alongside other games and can give you, it can scratch a certain itch that if you like these kinds of games, there's a lot to like in it. So anyway, that's Astor, Blade of the Monolith.
You can get the full audio version of this show by subscribing to the RSS feed, which you can find at dlcpod.com. And you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/dlcpod, where you will get ad-free versions of the show, video versions of the show on demand, and a whole bunch of extra content, like Wednesday's show, paid DLC, including spoiler chats, so much more. That's patreon.com/dlcpod.